A good ex should be like they are dead, never appearing in someone else's life again. Pei Chuan's eye was accidentally injured and needs a corneal transplant. I worked tirelessly, day and night, applying makeup to corpses to save enough for the surgery, only to have the opportunity snatched away. Seeing Pei Chuan in such a state of despair, I suddenly made a decision. I gave him my cornea. Yet, as soon as he regained his sight, he immediately went to look for the ex who dumped him years ago. Not long after, I found out even his injury was because of her. I took out my phone and called my father, whom I hadn't contacted in years. Dad, I lost. I want to come home. I listened in disbelief to Pei Chuan on the next hospital bed talking to someone on the phone. Shinger, my surgery was successful. I can see again. I'm coming to find you now. Today is the 5th day after the surgery, the day Pei Chuan gets his stitches removed. I thought the first thing he would do upon waking was to look for me. I didn't want to keep him waiting, so I specifically asked the nurse to arrange for me to be in the same room as him. There was only a thin curtain separating our two beds. It took me a while to react, my hand groping aimlessly on the hospital bed. Pei Chuan? Pei Chuan. Ah. My hand suddenly found empty space, causing me to fall hard to the ground. The pain brought tears to my eyes. Miss Meng, how did you fall? Where is Mr. Pei? It wasn't until the nurse doing her rounds came in that I was helped up. After thanking her, I gave a bitter smile and shook my head. I knew where Pei Chuan had gone. He went to find his ex. Pei Chuan and I started dating towards the end of university. It's been 5 years now. A few months ago, he had a car accident and injured his eyes. It was only after I finally managed to gather the surgery funds that the doctor informed me the cornea originally assigned to Pei Chuan had been taken by someone else. I couldn't bear to tell Pei Chuan the news. He would definitely not be able to handle it. So I decided to donate my corneas to him. To this day, Pei Chuan still doesn't know. Before we started dating, Pei Chuan was the most popular guy at school, naturally attracting a lot of admirers. When I met him, he had a girlfriend named Sue Shinger, who was the beauty of our department, and they were famously known as a couple on campus. But a month before I started dating him, she went abroad for further studies and abruptly broke up with Pei Chuan. On the day Pei Chuan was drinking his sorrows away at a bar, I confessed to him. I never expected him to agree. I just felt it would be a lifelong regret if I didn't tell him before graduation. He just stared at me blankly for a few minutes before leaning in to kiss me. That night, something inexplicable happened between us. The next day, he suggested we start dating. In my joy, I did not notice the indifference in his eyes. I don't know when they got back in touch again. Out of trust, I never go through Pei Chuan's phone. The nurse helped me find my phone and put it in my hand. After hesitating for a moment, I decided to call Pei Chuan. Xiaoming, call Pei Chuan's number. Hello, Io. Pei Chuan, where are you? The voice on the other end was a bit hesitant, and suddenly I vaguely heard a woman's voice come through. Chuan, take a left turn now. Io, I've already had the stitches removed, and the surgery was very successful. I'll head home later, don't worry. Before I could say anything, the call had already ended. I clutched the phone tightly in my hand. Everything before my eyes was pitch black, and I could only feel the tears falling heavily onto the back of my hand. A moment later, with the help of my white cane and the nurse's support, I left the hospital, sensing her somewhat sympathetic gaze piercing me like needles. During these days in the hospital, I've learned how to use the cane, but I'm still not very proficient with it. After finally making it home, I let out a sigh of relief and carefully sat on the sofa, gently rolling up my pants. I had fallen twice on the way back, and the first fall was quite hard. When I touched the injured area, it felt a bit sticky, probably bleeding. These are actually fewer falls compared to before. On the first day after the surgery, I fell a total of 10 times. Eventually, a nurse couldn't bear to watch anymore and helped by slowly teaching me how to use a white cane better. Pei Chuan didn't get home until the evening. During the days of the surgery, I lied to him, using the excuse that there were some urgent orders at the crematorium, so I didn't go to the hospital. Yow, your eyes? When he saw me, he understood how the corneas on his eyes had come to be, his voice tinged with disbelief. Are you foolish? I can wait even if the resources are taken by others, you. I don't mind. I can also wait to get a cornea transplant later. That's what I say, but who knows how long that will take. I reached out to hold his hand. During this period, I'll need you to work a bit harder. I might not be able to go to work temporarily. Pei Chuan pulled me tightly into his embrace. What are you talking about? It's my job to take care of you. I know I'm avoiding the issue. I didn't ask him why he only came home in the evening despite having his stitches removed in the morning, nor did I ask who the woman's voice on the phone was. Pei Chuan's family isn't from the city. They live in a small county. His family is of average means, and he studied computer science. It took him a long time to find his current job after graduating. During that time, seeing his anxiety, I patted my chest confidently and said, "I'll take care of you." I didn't pursue a job related to my field because at that time, we were so broke that we almost couldn't afford rent. I heard that doing makeup for the deceased at crematoriums was a quick way to earn money, so without hesitation, I went to a crematorium and found a mentor to learn from. Since I'm a girl and naturally know how to do makeup, I quickly got the hang of it. When I first saw dead people, I couldn't sleep all night long. Pei Chuan tirelessly held me, comforting me from dusk till dawn. So when I decided to donate my cornea to Pei Chuan, I felt no regret. I believed he wouldn't let me down. That night, Pei Chuan held me as usual to lull me to sleep. If my eyes hadn't hurt and woken me in the middle of the night, I wouldn't have noticed when the person beside me had left. I touched the bed next to me. It still had some warmth, suggesting he had just left. "Xiaoming, what time is it now?" "Master, it is currently 2:25 a.m. Beijing time." I slowly sat up, wrapping my arms around my knees, feeling a bit uneasy. Where did Pei Chuan go? When did he leave? I sat there not knowing how long I waited, until I heard the door open and familiar footsteps approaching. "Io, why are you up?" "Pei Chuan, where did you go?" "Oh, I was afraid you were hungry, so I went out to buy you the little wontons you like. Here, let me feed you." I numbly bit into the wonton in my mouth, a sourness gathering at the tip of my nose. There was seaweed in the wontons, but Pei Chuan knows I don't eat seaweed. Every time before, it was never added. This indicates that these wontons weren't bought for me at all, and the faint, unfamiliar perfume scent on him clearly indicated who he went out to meet in the middle of the night. Tears fell involuntarily, and I choked, coughing hard. "What's wrong?" I wiped the moisture from the corner of my eyes and smiled. "It's nothing. The wontons are just too delicious." "Silly, if you want them. I'll buy them for you every day." That night, even with Pei Chuan holding me, I couldn't fall asleep again. The darkness didn't scare me, but the scent at the tip of my nose that didn't belong to me kept me awake. The next day, before Pei Chuan went to work, he was still rambling, worried about me being home alone. "Yao, remember to call me immediately if anything happens, and I'll come back right away." "All right, I know." As the door closed, the entire room suddenly became quiet. I thought maybe I should get a dog. It could keep me company and also serve as a guide dog. After making up my mind, I contacted a nearby professional agency. They said they could deliver the dog tomorrow. The atmosphere was so quiet that I felt a bit uneasy. I turned on the TV, just to have some noise. I fell asleep on the sofa without realizing it, and when I woke up, I touched my face and felt some traces of dried tears. When Pei Chuan and I had just started dating, I told my parents. In my mind, they had always been open-minded, but that time they unexpectedly opposed it. We had the biggies. Tea argument of my life, and for the first time, my father spoke harsh words to me. "If you insist on being with him, then don't consider your mother and me as your parents." Then so be it. Since then, my parents stopped my bank card and have not contacted me again. I'm a bit confused about why they would oppose this so much. From my perspective, Pei Chuan is obviously so good. The following years proved that my judgment was correct, as he has been very good to me. When Pei Chuan came back in the evening, I told him about the dog. He was momentarily stunned but didn't say anything. The next morning, the agency delivered a golden retriever named Bebe. After I gave a few simple commands, Bebe was able to follow them well, so I decided to keep it. Bebe is very obedient, and having it around has made many things much more convenient for me, even allowing me to go places alone. That day, I heard the rain pouring outside, and suddenly remembered that Pei Chuan didn't take an umbrella when he left in the morning. After a moment's hesitation, I went out with Bebe and an umbrella. I barely managed to reach his office building before work ended. As I was about to call Pei Chuan on my phone, the two people standing next to me suddenly spoke. "Did you see that? Pei Chuan, whose eye is injured, actually came to work again." "I know, he came in a few days ago, right? Lucky guy, with quite the charm." "What do you mean?" "See that beautiful woman sitting over there? It's her third time here. They always seem so close every time." I tightened my grip on the leash and softly asked, "Hello, does your company have more than one Pei Chuan?" "There's only one." I bit my lip hard. I couldn't see whether the person waiting for Pei Chuan over there was his school beauty ex-girlfriend. Just as I dialed Pei Chuan's number, I heard the same voice from the phone call a few days ago not far away. Maybe it's because I can't see, but I'm incredibly sensitive to sounds. "Ah, Chuan over here." The call connected, and I listened to the deep, familiar voice on the other end. "Aereo, I'm working overtime. I might get home a bit late, So just order some takeout yourself, okay? Bye. But before I could finish, the call was already disconnected. I stood in place for a long time until my legs became somewhat stiff. BB sensed my mood and anxiously circled around my feet, rubbing against my leg. I squatted down halfway and patted its head. BB, let's go home. After returning home, I changed out of my soaked clothes and fumbled to dry BB's fur. By 10 in the evening, I hadn't waited for Pei Chuan to return, but I did receive a call from a stranger. Miss Meng, I'm Su Xinger. You should know who I am, right? Thank you for taking care of Pei Chuan these past few years. I know you donated your corneas to Pei Chuan, but you can't use that to tie him to your side, can you? The T's pure moral coercion. All you're doing is making him suffer. I advise you to have some self-awareness. Pei Chuan has always liked me. Even his eye injury this time was to protect me. Besides, he's with me now. The phone dropped straight onto my foot. I couldn't hear any other sound and collapsed weakly onto the ground. Is this the real reason Pei Chuan has never wanted to tell me about his injury? At that moment, it felt as if someone had grasped my throat. I couldn't utter a sound. My mind went completely blank. Bei circled anxiously at my feet, licking my face to calm my emotions. I hugged Bei and cried my heart out. When Pei Chuan returned, I heard the rustling sound of him taking off his clothes. A moment later, he slowly embraced me from behind. Pei Chuan, will you marry me? I felt his body stiffen for a second, and his hands around my waist gradually loosen. Yao, why are you still awake? Will you marry me? I held his hand, my somewhat vacant eyes looking at him. Why are you suddenly asking this? After a moment, I released his hand, closed my listless eyes. The moment he hesitated, I already understood his answer. Tugged at the corners of my mouth. It's okay, go to sleep. That night, Pei Chuan and I slept back to back for the first time. I think I might need to leave, to keep some dignity for myself, instead of waiting for others to push me away, but I didn't expect that the day I truly left would make me lose Bei forever. A few days later, the door opened, and Pei Chuan returned from work, but he didn't come back alone. Yao, I have to go on a business trip for a few days, and I'm not comfortable leaving you alone at home. I've asked a friend to help take care of you for a few days. Yao, hello, my name is Su Xing. You can call me Xinger. Ali is really good to you. Hearing that familiar woman's voice, I involuntarily took 2 steps back, managing a weak smile. Pei Chuan, I can manage on my own. There's no need for someone to look after me. Su Xinger hooked her arm around mine and leaned closer. Yao, you can't let down Ali's feelings, can you? These eyes of yours are for him. If he doesn't take good care of you, wouldn't that make him an ungrateful person, right, Ali? That's right, Yao. Be sensible and don't make me worry. The next morning, Pei Chuan left with a suitcase, leaving just Su Xinger, Bei, and me at home. As soon as Pei Chuan left, she revealed her true colors, brazenly looking around our home. Hey, Yao, what a coincidence. I also really like French decor. Your home with Pei Chuan is arranged exactly to my taste. I sat on the sofa, my fingers involuntarily clenching into fists, my nails digging deep into my flesh, yet I felt no pain. I remembered when Pei Chuan and I first rented this house. It was still an unfinished shell. Since my major was decorative desi. GN, Pei Chuan entrusted the entire room's renovation to me. He said although the house was rented, our days were our own, and we should think it over carefully. I actually preferred a Chinese style, but later Pei Chuan mentioned he liked the French style, so I abandoned my original design plan and renovated it in the French style. Thinking back now, it turns out it was because of Su Xinger's preferences. Just how much couldn't he forget her, to the point where he would even choose to decorate a rented house according to her likes. I merely gave a bitter smile in my heart and didn't respond to her. Yet I heard her footsteps walking towards the bedroom I shared with Pei Chuan, followed by Bei's barking. Damn dog. You scared me to death. Keep barking and see if I won't kill you. Yao, could you put the dog outside? I'm scared of dogs. Miss Su, Bei is a part of my family. If you're afraid, you should leave. Bei, come here, let's go for a walk. I fumbled to put the leash on Bei, grabbed my keys, and went out the door. I was used to taking Bei out for a walk every day. After about an hour, I called Bei to come home. While crossing the road, Bei suddenly broke free from the leash, forcefully knocking me to the side. I fell to the ground and then heard the screeching of brakes and the thud of something heavy hitting the ground. Bei. Panicked, I lay on the ground and felt around, but I didn't hear Bei responding. A bad feeling arose in my heart, and then I caught the metallic smell of blood at the tip of my nose. My fingertips touched something furry. It was Bei. I pressed my face to its head. It whimpered softly, licked my face, and then went silent. I was at a loss as I held it in my arms, tears falling involuntarily. Bebe, what's wrong with you?
Wake up, bye-bye.
Is anyone there? Please help me save it, I beg you. I heard the sound of high heels stopping beside me, and a glimmer of hope arose in me as I tightly grasped the person's ankle. Please help me save it, I beg you. I will give you money. Suddenly, my hand was forcefully shaken off, and my chin was gripped. Huh? Meng Yao, I'm telling you, this is the consequence of competing with me for Pei Chuan. This time it's just your dog, next time it might not be. I held Bebe tightly as I sat on the road, listening to the hustle and bustle of people and traffic around me. I was wrong. I shouldn't have lingered on Pei Chuan, and it's my fault Bebe is hurt.
I'm sorry, bye-bye.
It wasn't until the police arrived that they took Bebe and me to the station. I asked them to help give Bebe a proper burial. I took out my phone and dialed the number I hadn't contacted for years. As soon as the call connected, I couldn't stop myself from bursting into tears.
Dad, I lost.
I want to come home. I'm the only daughter of the Meng family. Since I was young, my fat her didn't allow me to reveal my identity outside in order to train me. So even when I started dating Pei Chuan in college, he didn't know the company he worked for belonged to my family. I am also stubborn. Over the years, I never went back home for Pei Chuan's sake. No matter how difficult my life was, I never mentioned it to my father. This time, Bebe's death finally made me give up on Pei Chuan. If it wasn't for his indulgence, Su Xinger wouldn't have moved into our home and wouldn't have dared to run over Bebe. After returning home, with my father's arrangements, I quickly found a cornea donor. After the surgery, the first thing I did was ask the agency for a picture of Bebe from when she was alive. It looked just as I imagined, with long golden fur and a round big head. There was a small red dot on its nose, which the trainer told me was its birthmark. It looked beautiful with its mouth open, as if it were smiling at me. I carefully placed the photo into my wallet. After Pei Chuan returned from his business trip, he found I wasn't at home. I don't know how Su Xinger explained it to him, but when I answered the phone, his first words were questioning. Io, how could you let Bebe bite Xinger? What if it has rabies? And where did you go? Xinger said that after Bebe bit her, you disappeared. My heart felt like it was being stabbed repeatedly until it was full of holes. On my end of the phone, I laughed silently. No matter what I said, Pei Chuan wouldn't believe me anyway. He only cared about Su Xinger. Haven't I learned enough lessons already? The corneas and Bebe. I wiped the moisture from the corner of my eyes. Pei Chuan, let's break up. I'll let you go, and you let me go too. Before the person on the other side could speak, I hung up the phone first for the first time. My dad originally intended to confront Pei Chuan, but I stopped him. I didn't want to have any slightest connection with him anymore. I changed my number and started my new life. At the company's year-end party, my dad took me along. Wearing a haute couture dress, I appeared in public for the first time as the heir of the Meng family. Through the crowd, I saw Pei Chuan's somewhat incredulous expression. I merely shifted my gaze indifferently and felt an unparalleled sense of security while holding my dad's arm. After leaving the restroom, I saw Pei Chuan standing at the door. Just as I was about to walk around him, he grabbed my wrist. Ah Yao, I've been looking for you for a long time. Why didn't you tell me you changed your number? And how are you the eldest daughter of the Meng family? After forcefully breaking free, I rubbed my wrist and looked at him nonchalantly. Mr. Pei, I remember we've already broken up. Why are you looking for me? Isn't Miss Su, whom you always think about, still around? I did not agree to break up. Your eyesight has recovered? I lowered my head and let out a cold laugh, surprised that he was so slow to realize, but I no longer cared. Just as I was about to say something, my father's voice came from behind Pei Chuan. What, Mr. Pei, do you want Yao Yao's eyes before you agree to break up? How audacious. Dad. I quickly ran to my father's side. It turned out he had come over out of concern since I had been inside for a long time, not expecting that Pei Chuan would be here pestering me. Chairman, that's not what I meant. I didn't know Ah Yao was your daughter. Even if Ah Yao weren't my daughter, it's still no reason for you to treat her this way. Huh, Pei Chuan, let me tell you, if it weren't for Yao Yao forbidding me from settling scores with you, I would have taken back those eyes of yours by now. You'd better not appear in front of me again, or don't blame me for being impolite. Pei Chuan was so frightened that he took a few steps back and fell to the ground. I looked down at him coldly and walked away with my father. Later, my father told me that Pei Chuan had resigned himself. Upon hearing this, I felt no stir of emotions and simply replied with an indifferent, "Oh, his matters no longer concern me." I agreed to the marriage alliance my father arranged for me. It was with a family that was a well-matched match to ours, the Meng family. Before going, I did not know it was Xieting. I had met Xieting before and knew him since childhood. He used to bully me a lot when we were young. Frankly, when I saw him for the first time that day in the cafe, I didn't even recognize him. The little dark-skinned kid who once looked like a small black lump had turned into an incredibly handsome guy. His father had arranged for him to study abroad since high school, so we hadn't seen each other for many years. Xieting. Long time no see, Yao. Xieting and I started dating smoothly. It was during that time that I accidentally found out that those anonymous love letters that appeared in my drawer during high school were actually written by him for me. After a year of dating, Xieting eagerly proposed to me, and I accepted. After we got married, Xieting found out I liked dogs, so he asked for my opinion about getting one. I hesitated for a moment before declining, thinking that even if we got another dog, it could not replace Bebe's place in my heart. But not long after, I encountered a small stray dog on the roadside, covered with black fur and looking somewhat scruffy. The dog wagged its tail happily when it saw me, and just as I was about to leave, it barked twice sharply, as if signaling something to me. I turned back to carefully observe it and suddenly noticed a small red spot on its nose, just like Bebe's, covered by fur. I softly called out, "Bebe." Woof. I couldn't help but cover my mouth, my nose tingling with emotion. Has my Bebe come back to find me? I carefully wrapped it in clothes and took it to the pet hospital. After an examination, the doctor told me it was a 2-month-old puppy, very healthy. I looked down at the puppy in my arms, its eyes bright, and seemingly telling me it was Bibi. I took it home, and this time, I will protect it well, not letting it get hurt again. Bibi. Woof. A puppy's love is never deceptive. Extra. I never expected Yao would donate their cornea to me. That day, when I returned home and saw Yao's vacant gaze, I immediately understood. The hospital resources must have been taken by someone else. After all, there are so many wealthy and powerful people nowadays. How can ordinary folks like us compete? Looking at Yao leaning on me, my heart couldn't help but sink. Io still doesn't know why my eyes were injured, and I haven't told her that it was actually because I was protecting Su Xinger, my ex-girlfriend. She came back from abroad recently and contacted me on the very first day of her return. Looking at her alluring and radiant face, I realized that my heart, which had always remained calm, started beating eagerly once again. In the years I've been with Io, I've never felt this way. Now that Io has given me her corneas, she only has me, and I cannot let her down. That night, when Su Xinger called me out again, I was determined to make things clear with her. Sitting in the wonton shop where I often took Io, looking at Su Xinger crying in front of me, I softened again. I thought if I could just have a little more time, I would definitely cut off my affection for her, even if it's just being friends. On the way back, feeling guilty, I asked the shop to pack a portion as well, thinking that I could explain it to Io if she asked. Once there was one, there was two. From then on, I often used the excuse of working overtime to accompany Su Xinger to go shopping, buy clothes, and watch movies. The two of us walked hand in hand on the street, like a loving couple. I thought, since Io couldn't see, it was fine as long as I was with Su Xinger outside, so I wouldn't be betraying Io. But then the company suddenly dispatched me on a business trip. It was urgent, and I hadn't made any prior arrangements. Su Xinger herself offered to help take care of Io, saying that Io wouldn't know her anyway, so I could just say she was a friend of mine. I thought that was okay, so I brought her home. The next day, I went on a business trip to the neighboring city, but unexpectedly, I received a call from Su Xinger the very next day, crying and telling me that Bebe had bitten her, and then both Io and the dog were nowhere to be found. At that time, I just felt something strange. Considering Bebe's temperament, it shouldn't be possible for him to bite people randomly. However, since Su Xinger was crying so pitifully over the phone, I didn't think too much about it and even comforted her. I thought, Yao might just be having a little tantrum, and that she would definitely call me if there was something wrong. I completed the work required for my business trip ahead of time and returned home, only to find everything in disarray when I opened the door. Su Xinger was lying on the sofa watching a movie and eating snacks. Yao still hadn't come home. I called her, only to be met with her sole statement: a breakup. Ever since that call where Yao said she wanted to break up, I've never been able to reach that number again. I even tried calling from other numbers, but to no avail. She must have changed her number. It was only then that I realized, after dating for so long, Yao had never mentioned her parents, nor did I know where her home was. I didn't know where to look for her. Shortly afterward, a video went viral on the internet. The video was taken by a passerby. A speeding car rushed towards a woman walking a dog on the crosswalk. As the sound of sudden braking rang out, the dog protected the woman and was violently hit, sent flying, and then slammed into the ground. A woman got out of the car, walked over to the blind woman on the crosswalk, said something to her, and then drove away, leaving the woman hugging her dog in despair, crying loudly. Beneath the video, the crowd was filled with righteous indignation, condemning the woman driving the car. I watched the video, my mind blank. The woman driving the car was clearly Sue Shinger, and she had killed Bebe, yet told me that Bebe had bitten her. I know how important Bebe was to Io. After the surgery, Bebe was her eyes. Rain or shine, she would always take Bebe out for a walk, but Sue Shinger actually killed it. I can't imagine the despair Io felt at that moment. I recalled the last phone call I made to Io. I was actually questioning her at that time, and I gave myself a hard slap. I took the video to find Sue Shinger. After watching it, she nonchalantly looked at her nails. Who told that beast to scare me? Ollie, you know I'm afraid of dogs. It was then that I realized the woman in front of me had such a cruel heart, not even sparing a guide dog. I left her house somewhat disheartened. Io, where are you? More people saw the video, and people on the internet began to dig into Sue Shinger's personal information. She was quickly located. Frightened, she dared not leave her house. After a long time, she even began experiencing hallucinations. It was half a year later that I saw Io again. She was wearing a pink gown, her hair elegantly pinned up. It was the first time I realized she was so beautiful that I couldn't look directly at her. She turned out to be the daughter of the Meng family, the daughter of our big boss. She never told me. Her marriage to Xie Ting later caused a sensation throughout Haishur. On that day, even the branches on the roadside were decorated with red tassels. I stood by T. He rode watching dozens of bridal cars circle around Haishur. I overheard people on the roadside gossiping that the Xie family prince loved her immensely and bought an island just for her, naming it after her. I saw their wedding photos in the news. She was wearing a snow-white wedding dress, her face beaming with a loving smile. That smile once belonged to me, but I lost it. I resigned from the Meng family. I have no face to stay there any longer. I couldn't find a job in Haishur anymore. I know it's because Yao's father said something, but I don't blame him. I had no other options, so I returned to my small hometown county and used the remaining money to open a small internet cafe. A few years later, I married the girl who ran the fast food shop next door, and